A side, B side, what side are you on?
Welcome. Hello, Adam. What's going on? It's another episode of A Side, B Side podcast.
Hi, Brooke. I'm glad to be here. I've been a little under the weather with this constant uh, temperature, rain fluctuation up here in the upper Midwest. We are not nearly as nice as April used to be this year. So it feels like everybody's got a cold. Everybody's got a little bit of gunk in the sinus area, or like raspy voice in the chest or something like that. And everyone's burning through their free COVID test just to make sure that we're not actually having COVID. But so if I sound a little bit like Jeremy Piven, that's why.
When you said that yesterday, we talked yesterday and you said that, I was like, first of all, hilarious. Second, that's a name I haven't thought of in forever.
Right. Yeah, but I don't know why. In my brain, whenever I am congested, I sound like Jeremy Piven, specifically from the movie Peace to You, where he plays like the bad guy who's connected with like the administration is trying to make life hard on all the cool kids. So I don't know why that I mentally just put myself in that character every time I have any congestion, but that's the only voice I can hear.
Okay, so we're
sorry, Jeremy Piven's the star of that one. David Spade's the bad guy. My bad.
Oh yeah. So we both are hooked on Moon Knight. You have seen the newest episode. I have not, but I told you recently I made the revelation while watching. I was like, I really recognize that voice. I go to IMDb and look it up, and I was like, holy crap, F. Murray Abraham. I did an interview with him, a few years ago. And so I have found that interview and I put it on my Facebook, and I have a personal website that I have put it on. So if you'd like to hear that interview, because what an amazing dude. And the stuff he talked about is still so relevant. But he talks about it in terms of Syrian refugees, and now we have Ukrainian refugees, but all the information that he says is still the same. Open your heart, open your eyes, and realize because somebody's a refugee doesn't make them a bad person.
Absolutely. And it's kind of it's disheartening in a way that like the same themes keep coming up years apart because we don't seem to be learning any lessons.
I know.
And not only are there Syrian refugees and Ukrainian refugees, there are hundreds of thousands of refugees in the continent of Africa that no one talks about, or in like Pakistan, Afghanistan, because of all the preemptive wars and the nonsense that we've been doing for 20 years over there. There are refugees all over the world that we act for some reason like it's not our problem. I think that's one of the neat things about the Falcon and Winter Soldier series, where the MCU touched on it very lightly, but this idea that because of the snap, everybody, people moved around, and now they're, people have come back and they're displaced. And what are we going to do with them? And how even within a fictional universe, they've really not figured out a way how to help people in a meaningful way. So it's even in our fictional universes, we can't figure it
out. Yeah. But I was just really pumped about that because it's always been one of my favorite interviews, and because he was just such a sweet, humble man. For a man at that time had been in over 170 titles. Now it's well over 200, and he was just so sweet and humble. And so, like to go, oh my God, that's F. Murray Abraham. I talked to him. That was a really exciting moment for me.
And like, how awesome is it for a Oscar-winning actor to be the voice of a character, just the voice, and just really never mentioned, and no one talked about it going in.
Right.
But Marvel's just like, oh, we just got this Oscar winner that's also the voice of Khonshu.
Yes.
Forgot to mention that.
Oscar winning, Golden Globe winning, multiple Emmy nominated, and it's just like, oh yeah, he's just the voice, whatever. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, he's in there. Like we didn't think to like they didn't promote it, they didn't brag about it, they weren't like, hey, he's also in this. Like, until you watch it, like at first you're not even sure it's him.
Right.
You're like, this is a great voice, but it's such a different character and a different, like style. He's so angry. So Lorelai has found her squeaky toy, which she's had this toy for a year, and today is the first day that she's decided that we need to make sure it squeaks. So I will do my best to stop her from squeaking.
That's funny.
We'll see how that goes. It's going to be in the background a couple times. But yeah, totally threw my train of thought off. But
no, but you're right. It is amazing that there's this Oscar-winning actor that they didn't brag on it. They just were like, yeah, here he is. And he was, and he went with it. He's like, yeah, here I am.
Yeah. And then the episode 5, I've seen it, you have not. It is some definite content warning, especially if you're watching it with your kids. I would suggest that parents preview it before and be ready for some conversations. Because it's something I did not expect. It's incredibly well done. Oscar Isaac is so good in this, and really in this entire episode, it's just him acting with his scene partner, in pretty much every scene. But it goes really into the history of the Mark Spector and Stephen Grant characters and how they came to be, and you learn so much, and it's a really powerful hour of television, but it's also deals with some really intense and complicated subject matter.
Okay. All right. And when you were like, if you're watching with kids, I'm going, oh yeah. My kids are grown, but I get it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, I would probably, grown kids different, like high schoolers, different. But I mean, I know there's a lot of Marvel fans out there who, like, when my kids were younger, we all watched everything together. Granted, it was just the movies at that point. Now they're teenagers. But, if you're somebody who's watching it with your 10, 12, 13, 14-year-old, somebody who's a little bit younger, you may want to just, be ready for some stuff.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I got. How about you?
Yeah, let's dive in. I'm super excited. We skipped a day on recording, and so I was able to add more to the A side. So I am chomping at the bit to get started.
All right, let's do it.
So in the last couple A sides, we've talked about old movies that you can't find anywhere online. Got to buy a DVD, and I was like, that's kind of feels like I'm shilling for Amazon or Apple Plus. You rent this stuff. But I'm gonna try to find something this week that it's easy access to one of your subscription services already. And last week we talked about the Boatniks and some of those old Disney movies. And while I was looking for those on Disney Plus, I stumbled upon one of my favorite films from childhood that I didn't even realize was its own universe. I knew there were all these movies. I didn't realize that they were as connected as they were, because as a kid, I would just watch them when they came on. But the entire movie franchise, including a 5-episode TV series, is all connected, with the exception of the made-for-TV movie in the 90s that kind of steps outside of the line. That would be a variant timeline. But otherwise, there's a cohesive timeline from 1969 all the way through the last movie in 2007. And going back and looking through them, I was astonished to find that basically the plot line of Terminator was echoed and talked about by Buddy Hackett in 1969 in the original Love Bug movie from Disney.
What?
So if you know the Love Bug series, it's Herbie, the sentient car that is a race car, but also, in his 5 movies, he's a race car, but he helps save a little old lady's house. He foils smugglers in Panama that are trying to steal Inca gold, which I, in my brain, I thought, oh, well, Raiders of the Lost Ark came out, so then they made a Herbie movie about that. But turns out Herbie Goes Bananas was actually before Raiders of the Lost Ark. So you could argue that Raiders of the Lost Ark was inspired by Herbie Goes Bananas. And then he was able to become a race car driver again with Lindsay Lohan in the early 2000s. But the entire story goes back to the beginning when Buddy Hackett, as Tennessee Steinmetz, is talking to Michelle Lee. No, sorry, talking to first he's talking to Dean Jones as Jim Douglas, who is sort of the race car driver of the the whole series at the beginning, and is talking about how he went on this meditation and mindfulness trip to a mountaintop where he was sitting with swamis and gurus and trying to find himself. And he realized that society and humanity has been given all these things, and we haven't done anything with the world. We've had our chance, and so at some point, something else is going to rise up and become the dominant civilization. And he said, we put all this information and we put all this technology into machines, and sooner or later, they're going to become sentient and rise up. So in 1969, Buddy Hackett, as Tennessee Steinmetz in The Love Bug, is foreshadowing Terminator.
Who knew?
I had no idea. I rewatched it so all five of the movies, The Love Bug, Herbie Rides Again, Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo, Herbie Goes Bananas, and then Herbie Fully Loaded, which was 2007 with Lindsay Lohan, are on Disney Plus. So if you want to be like me and have had it last 36 hours of like sinus pressure and feeling awful and just binge watch all 5 Herbie movies, you can do that. And I would absolutely recommend it because they hold up. And the fact that this is all based off of machines getting sentience, just like they did in Terminator, you can draw a direct line from Herbie, the car, to Skynet in Terminator, all the way to the Matrix.
What?
Because they're all about machines rising up. Now, granted, Herbie just does it to win races. But yes, the Terminator, just as it had to start somewhere. Herbie is the sentient machine that it's a good one, but sooner or later, sentient machines will also turn evil. So I'm just saying there's a line of similar thinking all the way through. But what I really wanted to talk about, besides the fact that you could view the entire Herbie thing as a precursor to even like Transformers as well, this Short Circuit, Johnny Comes Alive, like all of this seems to go back probably to Isaac Asimov and his, do androids dream of robotic sheep book in the early 50s and 60s, where we started talking about robotics, and Isaac Asimov had the laws of robotics that we created. But the fact that it pops up so innocently and so seemingly just like accepted by everyone in the film that this car has gained sentience, and then Herbie also has like several romances with other sentient cars throughout the series. In fact, he loses one race because his girlfriend goes off the road and he stops to check on her, which I mean is just gallant and very chivalrous, but also like they lost the race, so that was tough.
Right.
But the movie that I wanted to talk about the most, and my favorite one, at least until I rewatched all 5 of them in the last 36 hours, because now I like so many of them in different ways. Whereas the one I've watched the most in life was Herbie Goes Bananas. And it was the 1980 version, where after the first 3 films, you had 2 with Jim Douglas, and then one where Herbie goes off to a farm to save Tennessee Steinmetz' grandmother's house from this like corporation that was trying to take it over. The 4th one involves Herbie being found in, I think they're in Brazil or Mexico. I'm trying to remember. Puerto Vallarta, Mexico is where they were found. And Jim Douglas's nephew is given the car as part of like his legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So that turns into these guys picking up the car. Then they all get on a cruise ship. On the cruise ship, you meet Harvey Korman as Captain Bligh, which is a hilarious performance. You've also got Cloris Leachman as Aunt Lois, or Aunt Louise, who is they're both at the peak of their comedic powers, and it is a very slapstick, over the top movie. At one point, Herbie fights a bull, as you would expect. Another time, he fights a plane, and he stops these robbers from plundering an Inca heritage site and stealing all the gold. It is over the top, very silly, but there are moments in it that have popped into my brain ever since. At one point, there's the main character Paco is a little boy who creates a friendship with Herbie, and then they're hiding in the storage area of the cruise ship, and he's hiding in the trunk, which is actually the front, which I always thought was really cool. And he is hungry, and this guy sits down with this big chicken dinner that he's about to eat, and he turns, and the the trunk opens up and the kid grabs the chicken and he's eating the chicken inside the 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 trunk of the car. So the guy's like, "Where'd my chicken go?" And then he calls the captain trying to explain what happened, that the car ate his chicken. And he's like, "Captain, I hear a munch, a munch, a munch." And I have used that line, the munch, a munch, a munch. I have said, like, quoted a million times without anyone else realizing what I was quoting.
Mhm.
But I feel like I've said it to my brother at least once, and we both knew exactly, like, oh yeah, Herbie Goes Bananas. Because Herbie Goes Bananas was on one of the many VHS tapes that we had recorded, and then my father was very detailed, so he would have the exact counter number where the movie started and where it ended, and the running time. So
Holy
you could always,
jeez.
so you could just like fast forward to like 36:72, and that's going to be the beginning of this movie, and then 30,
Wow.
yeah, very detailed. He's, every receipt that has ever happened, my parents still have. So take that, tax people, if you want to go for it. So we would watch it over and over and over. I believe Herbie Goes Bananas was on the same VHS tape as like Return of the Jedi. So it was just like, boom, just put that in. There's your Saturday afternoon. It's going to be pretty great. Hopefully we have one of those automatic rewind things, because we're going to watch it again tomorrow. So the Herbie Goes Bananas was often considered the least successful of the Herbie movies of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. In fact, it was probably the one that made it take another 20 some years. There was the 1997 Bruce Campbell TV movie, which was not as good. Even though I love Bruce Campbell. So it took 17 years before another one was made, and then 27 years before another one was put into the theaters with Herbie Fully Loaded. I do feel like we are due for a new Herbie movie or series or something on Disney Plus, because we are now at 15 years since the Lindsay Lohan one, and it is such a interesting property that, like, I feel like people would respond to it, even if it's like a cartoon. I'm a little surprised they haven't brought it back yet, but Disney has so many options that they probably don't have it on the top of their list. But Herbie Goes Bananas, often considered the worst of the Herbie movies. However, I love it for its complete over the topness. And when I was a little kid, seeing a kid who was a pickpocket at the beginning of the movie and then becomes a taxi driver with Herbie in the middle, and by the end is going to be a race car driver, all while being seemingly 10 years old, seemed really cool. So it was a movie about possibilities as well. The Herbie series is amazing. I did not realize it was connected in the same way of robots taking over the world, but it kind of foreshadows that in a much more, nice way, because Herbie's, seemingly a lawful good character, if a bit mischievous. So if you were like me and you want to check them out, all 5 of them are available on Disney Plus right now, and you can start them in order. Just make sure that it'll probably suggest stuff out of order, so you got to be careful. So it's a Love Bug, then Herbie Rides Again, and then Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo, and then Herbie Goes Bananas, and then of course finally the 2005, I think I said 2007 or 2005 Herbie Fully Loaded with Lindsay Lohan.
All right, there you go. With that part where you were talking about Herbie and the young boy, it kind of put me in the mind of another kind of, I guess, robot alien, Bumblebee with the Transformers.
Yeah, it's very, very much like that. I mean, honestly, I think like Bumblebee was just a knockoff of Herbie, and they gave him guns.
I can accept that.
Herbie came out 20 years before Bumblebee did, or before Bumblebee was a character on Transformers, and then like the Bumblebee movie with Haley Steinfeld.
Yes.
Yeah.
Steinfeld.
God, I'm so good with names. That's why this is an Angelina Jolie podcast. That's the one name I can always remember. Is really enjoyable. I thought it was underrated and probably better than the last couple Transformers movies. But if you just made that, if that was just a Herbie movie, it would also kind of be the same movie. I mean, with guns.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There you go.
Is that the A side?
That's the A side. Go watch Herbie. It's better than you remember, and you'll have a great time.
So Adam, as you mentioned earlier, we had an extra day, and I was jumping ahead for like next week, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna creep Adam out, and I'm gonna find somebody in Minnesota. And I did, and I was like, you know what? That's gonna be this week.
Awesome. I'm like just flying high on the fact that like Herbie is basically Skynet and how much I love these 5 movies. And now you're going to be like, yeah, but don't go outside.
Okay, how spoiler alert, you don't have to worry about him. That's what I'll say.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good.
So this week we are talking about Daniel Joe Hittle. So Daniel Joe was born on March 1st of 1950 in Perry County, Indiana, but he was adopted at a very early age by Henry and Margaret Hittle, a couple who moved to a small farm near Motley, Minnesota. Is that close to you? Do you know where that is?
I don't know where Motley is. Motley.
See, even more reason Minnesota. Not to worry. It's obviously not even close to you.
Well, it's probably not, but there's this whole parts of the state that you know your area, and then like a lot of states are much bigger than you think. And you're like, oh wow, I have no idea where that is.
Right.
And then see Staples. Oh, Staples Motley, I've heard of. Okay. Oh yeah, so it's way up north.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's like 4 hours north. Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe like 3 hours.
So there's not a whole lot about Daniel Joe's childhood that's known. Some friends and acquaintances described him as quiet. Some described him as polite. Some people said he couldn't stand being teased. Some people described him as violent and drunk.
All right. Well, it just depends. I guess it depends on when you met him.
Yeah, pretty much. His best friend from high school, Gary Wentworth, later revealed that Daniel Joe seemed to be harboring what was like a budding hatred for his very religious adoptive mother. Behind closed doors, also, Daniel Joe was abusive, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. The real story with Daniel Joe begins April 4th of 1974. Now, we talked about this budding hatred that he had for his adoptive mother. Well, he got upset that his adoptive parents, which they're his parents, but I guess in his mind, if he's got this any excuse, right?
Right. Yeah.
His parents' dog had allegedly scratched his truck, and it started an argument with his mom, Margaret. Well, during this argument, he must have threatened to shoot her, and she told him, yeah, you don't have the courage to do it. He pulled out a shotgun and immediately shot her.
Oh, okay.
Well,
maybe don't call. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. While reaching for his own firearm, his dad, Henry, was reaching for his firearm, and Daniel Joe shot and killed him on the spot. Now, if you look into this story, there's going to be sources that say he stabbed them, but I found the newspaper article that described the incident that said he shot them in quick succession to their death.
Yeah. Scary that there's different time.
Right. So, of course, the neighbors hear the gunshots. They're alarmed. They notify police. Police arrive on the scene, and they find his parents' bodies laying just inside the front door of the house. They find him. He's arrested. He's charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and placed in prison on a $15,000 bond, and that awaiting trial. He has the trial. He's found guilty of 2 counts of second-degree murder, and he receives 2 concurrent 30-year sentences at the Minnesota Correctional Facility in Stillwater.
Yeah, that's right up the road.
In the same month as his trial was taking place, there was a new bill proposed and sponsored by State Rep James E. Oland. And this bill passed. This bill mandated that convicts serving at least a 20-year sentence be eligible for parole without even needing to serve a minimum sentence. All they had to do was be model inmates. Can you believe this passed?
Well, in what year was this?
So this was so this was between 73 and 84.
Weird. That doesn't seem logical, but I mean, maybe it was a different time. Now it seems like the government's more interested in like locking everybody up for as long as possible. Right.
Well, he benefited from this new bill. He qualified for early release under the provision of this bill because he was a model inmate, which meant he was paroled in 1984. So he requests to move to Garland, Texas. He requests permission to move to Garland, Texas, where he's kept under surveillance by authorities. He moves there with his second wife. He tried to move to Las Vegas, but they told him no. So he had to stay in Texas. Well, at some point, he had developed a drug use or a drug habit, and like real bad. He even had like his go-to drug dealer. His drug dealer was 39-year-old Mary Goss. So one night in 1989, Daniel Joe and Mary Goss were known to get into arguments quite frequently over like his debts. She even had him arrested one time because he slashed his tires. So one night, which that night is November 15th of 1989, Mary had a party. Daniel and his wife were at the party. Things got out of hand. Daniel was thrown out of the party, which of course means the wife had to leave.
Yep.
So Daniel's pissed off because he's thrown out of the party. And he ends up getting, this was about 11 p.m. He ends up getting into an argument with his wife. They go home, they're arguing. He leaves the house and heads back over to Mary Goss's house, but he leaves the house with a 20 gauge shotgun.
Yeah, never a good sign.
So he's on his way back over to Mary Goss's house with his 20 gauge shotgun in his car. He's pissed off. He's speeding. So he's pulled over by 48-year-old police officer Gerald Ray Walker. So nervous that this officer is going to see this shotgun in his car and probably run his plates and realize, okay, he's a convicted felon, shouldn't have a shotgun. Yeah. As the officer starts walking towards his vehicle, he pulls the trigger. He shoots him in the chest, speeds off. Unfortunately, Gerald Ray Walker did die due to his injuries. Again, he speeds off. He leaves Gerald Ray Walker right where he is, and he goes back to Mary Goss's house. Around 11:25, he kicks through the door and opens fire. He kills Mary Goss and two of her friends, 39-year-old Richard Joseph Cook and 19-year-old Raymond Scott Gregg. He then, unfortunately, realizes there's somebody else in this house.
Oh, no.
It was Mary's 4-year-old daughter, Christy Condon. So he's already killed Mary. He's unloaded his weapon to the point of no ammunition on Mary.
He's on full murder spree.
Full murder spree. He's unloaded on Mary, Richard, and Raymond. And he sees Christy. He reloads and unfortunately shoots Christy. Daniel Joe didn't realize this, but as the police officer, Gerald Ray Walker, was approaching his vehicle, he had already called in the license plate of Daniel's truck. And so the police, of course, knowing what happened to the officer, are on the lookout for him already.
Yeah.
So he, of course, does all his murdering, and he leaves Mary's house, and he's driving, and he gets close to his house where he's spotted by police, and they engage in a pursuit with him because he just takes off, and so they chase. So then he ends up crashing. He's trying to flee, but he ends up crashing his car. So then he starts a gunfight with police. He fires at least 2 shots before, he's emptying out his shotgun. Then he realizes, okay, I'm out of ammunition. He gets out, falls to his ground, but he has his hands behind him where police can't see his hands. Right. They keep telling him, show your hands, show your hands, show your hands, but he refuses. So they send the police dog to engage with him twice. Finally, he surrenders and he is arrested. Police get to Mary Goss's house and they realize that sweet Christy is still alive, and they take her to Baylor University Medical Center. She is critically injured, and her family decides to take her off of life support 2 days later, and they consent to her organs being donated for science. So she officially is declared dead 2 days later. So Daniel is arrested, and he's taken to the hospital where he's treated for minor injuries that he suffered during the shootout. Then he's taken to Garland City Jail and placed on a $250,000 bond, where he's charged with capital murder, 3 counts of attempted murder for the police related shootings. So he sits there, he's awaiting trial. And then, finally he goes to trial, a jury trial. He's convicted on all counts in August of 1990. That's the capital murder and then the attempted murder of the police officers. He's sentenced to death. Due to this, he's not tried for those other murders, the 4 other murders, Mary, her daughter, and her 2 friends. He's not tried because he's already got the death sentence. We've seen this happen, several times.
Well, and sometimes doesn't it seem like the legal system is like, well, if we put everything into one basket and something goes wrong, then like there's a mistrial or something, or they get acquitted. If we would keep these over the side, we can always go back and charge them for these if something goes wrong. It's
right.
like,
yeah.
It's like kicking the field goal on 3rd down. If the snap's bad, then you just kick again on 4th.
He's sentenced to death. Throughout the proceedings, throughout his trial, people note that he doesn't seem to have a care in the world. He's just chilling. Some witnesses testify that he had actually bragged about his parents' murder and had spoken of killing other people in the past, including police officers. He was quoted as saying, "Killing's not really a big deal to me."
Yeah, I mean, he's already done it once and done the time. He didn't seem to really rehabilitate him in any way. Just
right.
Played the game and got out.
It wasn't like, I don't want to go back there. It was like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. He tries for years to appeal his sentence to both the state and the federal courts. It's not successful. His death sentence is held up at every single stage. On January 10th of 1994, he has his final appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States, and it is denied, which means you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
On December 6th of 2000, Daniel Joe Hittle was executed via lethal injection at the Huntsville unit. His last statement was Sant Ajib Singh. That's it. Literally, Sant Ajib Singh. That's it. He was referencing an Indian guru named Ajib Singh, who advocated for love and nonviolence. Oh, the irony. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, so what? Like in jail, he got conscience?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I love to believe that people can change, but can somebody like that? So ruthlessly, so cold-hearted, cold-blooded, murdering people, can that person change?
Sure doesn't seem like it. I mean, and it wasn't like, it sounds like the criteria for releasing them the first time was not a whole lot about rehabilitation. It was just about, we got too many people in jail and we need to let some of them out.
Right. Yeah. So Daniel Joe Hittle was pronounced dead at 6:20 p.m. on December 6th, 9 minutes after the lethal injection drugs were initially administered. His execution was attended by several witnesses, including the widow of Gerald Walker and a fellow police officer. Gerald Widows Walker released a statement thanking the state of Texas for carrying out the execution. He was the 39th execution in the state that year.
Well, there was definitely the Minnesota connections, but I'm glad that I'm just kind of shocked. I guess I'm not shocked, but you would have thought in a shootout with police that when you are firing at the police and then you get out of the vehicle, if they can't see your hands, they really going to give you that much time.
So you know what? I did skip over a little bit. We can jump back here just a second. This doesn't impact this. This had nothing to do with this case, but I had pulled up a little bit about his past to kind of give you like an insight into his personality, because he kind of reminded me a bit of. Do you remember the Iceman we talked about? And then also, we talked about the dude that was in that one small town that was so brutal that somebody in the town killed him, and everybody in the town knows, but nobody will say.
Yeah.
He kind of reminds me of the two of them, because he was like seriously abusive. Like his first wife, one time he pointed a loaded shotgun at her face because she wouldn't give him the keys to his car. He then hit her daughter in the face.
Goodness.
The same 1-year-old child that he hit in the face, he gave a monkey doll, and then he took it back and he tied it to the her playpen with a noose.
That's creepy.
Yeah. His second wife, on their day of their wedding shower, he hit her when she didn't pick up a mirror that he'd broken. He once shot out her tire, and he kicked her in the stomach when she was pregnant because she was past her due date.
Good God.
In high school, he killed a neighbor's dog because beating it to death because it wouldn't stop barking one night.
Good God. So there's the hurting animals at a young age thing.
Yep. And then during his time while incarcerated in Minnesota, he had several write-ups for disciplinary violations, to include, and this is not all of them, this is just a few. So how he was considered a model prisoner is the other part of this I don't get.
Yeah, like if you got writing up, that's not model prisoner.
Right. So he had violations including drug possession of a knife, possession of contraband, which, I mean, contraband can be anything from food that's not allowed to drugs. But regardless, he had it. He also had drug. He had drug paraphernalia, disobeying a direct order, interfering with a shakedown, and like I said, that's just some of it. So how he was considered a model prisoner and released in Minnesota to even then go on to be able to do this, I don't understand.
I mean, they must have just been so overcrowded that they're like, we got to get people out of here. I'm trying to rationalize it that way, but I don't understand the process.
So Daniel Joe Hittle, fortunately, he is no longer a threat. He was a very disgusting, disturbing man. And
somebody that, you know, if the process, it's frustrating always when it feels like the second part could have been stopped if, you know, he was caught one time.
Right.
How many times have we run into this where like somebody gets caught and they get released and you just release the wrong guy? So definitely was not somebody that should be back out on the streets. Clearly wasn't going to follow the, you know, especially all the stuff that he did in jail is to say, oh, good model citizen.
Yeah, I wonder what their criteria was. It doesn't really, I couldn't find what the criteria was for like what they consider a model citizen because of all of the crap that he did.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's perspective. If everybody's doing stuff, maybe he was just in a really unruly jail. They're like, well, this guy only has 15 demerits. That guy's got 45. So
when you compare the two, he's model.
Yeah, you know, like in the land of Smurfs, I'm a giant.
But there you go. That's the B-side this week. That's the story of Daniel Joe Hittle. All right, Adam, take it away.
Yes. So if you want to support the podcast, well, thank you for listening, first of all, because that's a big part of it. But you can go to our website, A-side, B-side podcast.square.site. Once you get there, you'll see all of our links to our social medias and all of the places that you can listen to podcasts where you can subscribe, rate, like, and share. Every Friday, we post a new episode, unless something weird happens, but I think that's only happened once or twice in the last 90 episodes. Mm-hmm. This is episode 90, which feels pretty awesome. We're only 10 away from 100, which is about 90 more than most people expected Adam would make it through. So that's pretty exciting. You can buy some merch on our website. You can go to buyusacoffee.com and search A-Side, B-Side podcast and send coffee to Brooke when she has to go through and edit all of this stuff and make it sound like I can speak coherent sentences all the time, and also cut out all the times that I say whoa, because otherwise it just becomes like a Keanu Reeves podcast. You can also, or Joey from Blossom.
Joey from Blossom, yes.
Yeah. What am I missing, Brooke? Oh, YouTube. We got a YouTube channel that's on there. But yeah, the best way, if you've enjoyed this episode, is to like it, rate it on your podcast area, and then share it with somebody. Put it in your Instagram feed, drop it on your Facebook feed, send it to your mom in an email, print out a QR code, and put it in an envelope and mail it to your grandparents. All of these are good options.
Because the grandparents are going to be able to do that.
Just QR codes are easier. I mean, come on. There is another QR code in the newest episode of Moon Knight as well. So it's kind of a cool little Easter egg thing that they've been doing this whole series, and I wonder if it's something they'll continue to do. So I
love that I got to tell you about the first one. I was like, did you know?
Yeah.
That in the first episode,
at that point. Well, and I've missed every single one. Like, I don't like I don't see them when I'm watching it the first time. I'll watch like a recap or something by Nerdist, and then they'll be like, "Go there," and I'm like, "Oh," then I rewatch it. I'm like, "Oh, obviously it's right there." But every time, like when you told me, I think I'd watched the first episode 3 times already. Had not seen it. Had not seen it. It was just like, do So it's one of those things you really got to be looking for. And I always forget about them, and then I find out about it later, and I have to go back and do it. But it's kind of cool to be able to get the digital versions of the comics and go back into some of the old character stuff. So QR codes are top of mind. So print that out and mail it to your grandparents, and they can also like the podcast.
All right. I think that's all. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Brooke.